I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of the Revelation, chapter 20. Let's focus on verses 11 through 15. Then I saw a great white throne and the one seated on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. I also saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by what was written in the books. Then the sea gave up its dead, and death and Hades gave up their dead, and all were judged according to their works. Death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire, and anyone not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. Revelation 20, verses 11 through 15. Kind of a sobering thought, isn't it? Well, it should be. I've heard it said by some New Age and liberal religious types that all roads lead to God. And the foundation of their statement is a heresy. It assumes that all religions eventually lead you to the same type of eternal salvation. And so to them, it doesn't matter which road that you choose because they all arrive at the same destination. Well, according to today's passage, there is some truth to their assumption, though. All roads eventually do lead to God. That is to say, they all lead to the judgment of God. We will all, great and small, stand before the Lord's judgment. And the real question should be, which road gets me past God's judgment and into an eternity in heaven with Him? You see, there's only one way. There's only one true way. And if the narrow path had a street sign at its entrance, it would read, Messiah Jesus, or perhaps just simply, the way. Some skeptics would argue that such an exclusive assumption is a New Testament fable, an idea that Judaism doesn't even teach. Well, while there's many Old Testament references to the day of the Lord and to the last day, the judgment, etc., consider this one statement, at least from the prophet Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 8. The Lord through him says this, "Therefore wait for me," the Lord's declaration, "until the day I rise up for plunder. For my decision is to gather nations, to assemble kingdoms, in order to pour out my indignation on them. All my burning anger, the whole earth will be consumed with the fire of my jealousy." Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 8. The Bible gives a symmetrical picture of salvation history. In its first two chapters, at the very beginning of history, a sinless world is described. At the beginning of the third chapter of Genesis, Satan enters and entices Eve and Adam into sin, resulting in damage both to humanity and to the world. God's plan from the very beginning was to remedy this damage through the death and the resurrection of the Messiah. And then the remaining 1,256 chapters of the Bible deal with the outworking of God's plan. Now, here at the end of history, in the third to last chapter of the Bible, Satan is judged, with the wicked condemned to the lake of fire. Then, the final two chapters of the Revelation present a newly created earth and a humanity restored to Eden-like sinlessness. But there is one asymmetry. Satan and the first man, Adam, who caused sin at the beginning, they're not there. While God the Father and the one that the Scripture calls the second Adam, Jesus, restores sinlessness at the end, you see no sight of Satan in those who refuse to believe the gospel. Don't be caught in that second group, because salvation is offered to you if you would confess your sin to the Lord, you would acknowledge that Jesus died on the cross to pay the penalty for your sin, that He rose from the grave, and that He is alive today, offering salvation to you. If you would turn from that sin and receive salvation, you will be saved. And you could do that even now. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at groundworksministries.com.